Hello guys, welcome to another session of Advanced Programming with Python. In this tutorial, we will talk about working with strings in Python. Now, one of the most common types of data that we are going to be working with in Python is going to be strings. And strings are basically just plain text. So any text that we want to have inside of our program, we can store inside of a string. So I want to talk to you guys about all the cool things we can do with strings, and we are basically just going to get sorry going to get a full introduction into why strings are awesome. So let's create a new project. I'm gonna name it working with strings. You can choose the environment of your choice as I have described it many times. Let's create it. Okay, and I'm gonna delete this. So I'm just going to actually print out a string. I'm just going to say print, and inside these parentheses I'm going to say, for example, advanced programming with Python. I can type out a string. In order to create a string, I need to use quotation marks. So I can make an open and close quotation mark as I made it here. So inside the quotation, I can put whatever the text I want to, as I put advanced programming with Python. So now we have a string with the text inside it. So when I run my program down here, you can see that it printed out advanced programming with Python. And when we have these strings, there are actually a bunch of cool things that we can do with them. So one thing I could do is I can create a new line inside of a string, so if I want it, I mean. So I can come over with, you can say that if you want to create a new line within that string, you can just put backslash and so if you run, and when I wrote it backslash and you can see that it's, for example, if I do it here, okay, it's not like that. Anyhow, when we run the program, you can see that the advanced programming is printed in the first line and the with Python is printed in the second line. So what this is going to do, or did actually, it's going to insert this special character, you can say, is going to insert a new line into the string. So now this complete one line, actually the string is divided into two lines when it is going to be printed. In addition to this backslash n, I could also use a backslash quotation mark. For example, if I want to put a quotation marks inside my string, I cannot just put a quotation mark like that, because Python is gonna think that I'm gonna trying to end this string. So if I just put the quotation marks like this, the Python will think that okay, the string is finished. So I cannot use the quotation mark inside a string like this. So I have to use backslash, and this backslash is actually called the escape character. And it basically just tells Python that whatever character comes after it, we want to render arbitrary. So when I say backslash quotation marks, it basically tells the Python that hey Python, I want to print a quotation marks inside it. So when we are going to print, let's see what happens. You can see that now the quotation marks is printed, but if we don't put the backslash and we just put the quotation marks and we try to run a program, it will give us an error and it says there is a syntax error and invalid syntax. So if I need to print anything special characters inside the strings, I have to put some escape characters for that. For example, a new line character or quotation marks or some other characters which we will know in our coming lectures. So if you want to print a backslash, what you have to do, for example, if you just write this one and you try to print a you wanted to print a backslash inside this string, you just put a backslash, that's it. Now see what will happen. Will it run or not? Let's see. Okay, you can see here that it's executed successfully. Okay. If I put a double quotation marks, what will happen? It will still go. Okay. So actually you can see here that it gave me an error, but Python is really smart enough that it came to know that okay, this one is escape character. So the character after it is the space. So that's why it ignored it. But if you want to put a backslash, you have to put double backslash. So now you can see that it did not give an error on the line and it printed the backslash. So if you want, you can use those backslash to make a new line or pronounce quotation marks, or you can just use as it is for normal backslash. In addition to just typing out a string here, we can also create a new string variable. So let's go up here and create a variable. Name is name it as phrase. And I'm gonna set it equal to okay, let's copy paste that one. I'm gonna set it equal to advanced programming with Python, and you can say that okay, okay. So this variable will store the string value, and the string variable is called phrase. And then when I want to print out that variable, I just have to use that variable name, and that's it. Let's play it, run this program and see. Now you can see that it printed out that string. Or if you want, we can use these variables storing for different type of strings, and then we can manipulate them with time. So we can also use the concatenation. The concatenation is basically, I described it in my last session. The concatenation is basically the process of taking a string and then appending another string onto it. So let's come over here and let's say that, okay, I want to add something. For example, offered for graduate students. So let's run this and see what will happen. So you can see here that we took one string. That string is actually stored in a variable, and then we concatenated it with another string with a plus sign. So whenever there are two strings and there is a plus sign in it, it means the first string is gonna append with the second one, so they are going to be concatenate with it. So in addition to doing all this stuff, the concatenation and other things, playing with the strings, we can also use special things which are called functions. And a function is basically just a little block of code that we can run, and it will perform a specific operation for us. So we can use functions to modify our strings. We can also use functions to get information about our strings. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple of common functions we can use with these strings, and they're actually going to do some awesome stuff. So in order to access one of these functions, I can just say phrase, and then, for example, I can say dot, and then you can see here that there are many functions which we can use. For example, there is a find function, join function, format, count, index, capitalize, case fault center, and many others. You can just see there are plenty of functions which you can use with a string. So I'm going to convert this string entirely into lowercase. So I could just say phrase dot then lower. Then you can see that open and close bracket. You can see there was a function. I just press entered and it automatically put the open and close bracket. So when we run the program, and now you can see here that it's printed out the advanced programming with the Python, but all of it is in the lowercase. We can do the same thing with the, if you want to print this sentence or string into an upper case, you can just use upper function, and you just have to run this, and you will see that all of it, even though you entered the phrase, you entered the sentence with the uh, I mean all the letters were not capital, but once you use this function, it will automatically convert your sentence, all the characters, to the uppercase. It will sorry. So this upper function has entirely converted the string into uppercase. So in addition to the converting the string into uppercase or lowercase, we can also check that whether the string is entirely in the uppercase or lowercase. So for example, I can say that phrase dot is upper. So this is going to give me back a true or false value. So let's check. You can see that it's printed out false. And it's right obviously because not all the characters are upper one. Similarly, let's do one thing more. For example, let's make another variable for a string phrase 2, and we can say that phrase of phrase dot upper, and now print phrase 2 is upper. Now let's run this, and there are two variables. One is storing the advanced, both of them are storing the advanced programming with Python, and one of them is storing all the characters with the in the uppercase. So let's run this and see what will happen. So you can see here that once we run the program and we executed the program, it actually shows us that okay, the phrase 1 is not all the characters are in the uppercase. Similarly, for the phrase 2, and all the characters are in the uppercase. That's why it showed us true down here. Similarly, what we can do, we can also use these functions in combination with each other. For example, I can say phrase dot upper and then is upper. So first what it will do, it will convert the phrase to the uppercase, entire phrase, entire sentence to the uppercase, and then it will check whether is it uppercase or not. So let's run it and see. Oh, I forgot to put the dot sign because we are using the function, so we can call it with the dot. So you can see here the phrase variable and the value of the phrase, I mean that sentence is first converted to the uppercase and then it's checking whether the sentence is in the uppercase or not. So we can use the functions, we can use different combinations of the function together in one line. So there are few others which I want to show you, a few other functions of strings which we can use, and those are really useful functions. So if I want to figure out how many characters were inside of this string, I can just say uh, I want to, okay, let's do it in number line. Let's go here and print phrase dot len. So you can see here that this function is a separate function which is called by calling len, writing the len, and then you have to pass the sentence inside that. If we can see, for example, you can see here, this is the function len and its parameters are object. It can be any object. So we are sending the sentence as an object inside this. So let's run and see. You can see here that it has 32 the length of this string is 32, and if you count these I mean from here to here, it will have 32 characters. So it's basically giving the length function this, and it's going to split out the numbers, so it will tell you how many characters are inside this string. So that's how we can get a length of the string, and that's going to be very useful if we go on with the Python. We can also get the individual characters inside the string. We can also get individual characters inside of a string. So imagine if we want to just grab one of these characters inside of this string. Imagine if I want to figure out what is the first character of this string. What we can do is we can use an open and close square bracket. For example, I use right phase and then square brackets, just like that, and inside this I can specify the index of the character that I want to grab, that I want to get. So if you want to grab the first character in the string, you can put a 0. So if I say phrase square bracket 0 and we run it, we can see that it gives a capital A. So if we print out 1, you can see it grab the second character. So I want to point out one thing here. If we are working in Python, and if we want to get the index in the Python, the index of the string starts with the 0. So if we want to grab the index of A here, we have to put 0. As I told you that strings index starts from the 0 in Python. For example, let's do something. Let me show you. For example, A is at 0 index, B is at 1 index, V is at 2, similarly A at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this space is at 8th index. So this is how the Python works. So actually we start counting at 0. So if you want to access the first character or second character or third character, then I have to start with the 0. So this is not just with the Python. Most of the programming languages actually use this. I mean, the index starts with the 0. Similarly, if I want to get the 8th character, which is actually the space, so let's see what will happen. Oh, I have to remove this one. This was just for telling you people what are the indices. So you can see here that there is actually a space printed here. So this is actually a space which is highlighted when I select it with the mouse. So this is actually really useful, especially for grabbing a specific character inside a string, and you are going to be using that a lot in Python. There's also another really good function that we can use, and it's called the index function. So basically what the index function is used for, it's actually gonna tell us where a specific character or a string is located inside of our strings. For example, we can say that phrase dot index. Okay, and here you can see that it has many parameters required. And index, so we So we can give here we have to give the information, the value, and the value which we are going to give here is actually called, I mean, we are passing the parameter. So this function requires a parameter, and you will hear this word a lot, parameter, when we are programming. So what we have to do, we have to give the value inside the string. So we are going to search that what is the index of the letter A, of the character A. So when we run this, it must give us the character value. So actually I didn't print it out. So let's print it out. Let's write it inside a function. So what actually it's going to do, it's going to tell us at which index the character A is in this string. So you can see here that it showed us that character A is on the 0th index. Similarly, if I wrote, uh, for example, what should I write? Similarly, if I write P, and it will tell us that the index of the P, and you can see here that P is at the 9th index, even though there is another P, but what it will do, it will actually tell us the first occurrence of that character. So it's not just with the character, I mean, you can also put the actual word inside here. Uh, you can put any word that you want to search, you want to get the index of that word. You can put inside of that. For example, if I want to put with, I want to get the index, starting index of the word with inside that sentence. So let's run this and see what will come. It comes, it tells us that width is at the 21st index. So this index is actually the starting index of that word. So it's actually the index of W. So when we pass a word inside this index function, so it will actually tell us where that word is inside that sentence. So if I put something here that is not inside this string, for example, 4, and let's search, what will happen? Will it give us some index or not? So you can see that it gave us an error because there is no 4 in that, that's why it gave us the error. So this index function is also one of the good functions which we are going to use a lot in Python. There is another function also. I'm gonna command this. So let's see another function. This, okay. Let's see another function which is called replace. So you can see here that besides that there are 4 parameters which we can pass here. I mean, including this R. If we don't pass it, it does not matter. So anyhow, there is a replace function, and if I press enter, so in here I can give 2 values. There is 2 values which I have to give. So the first value is the one which we want to replace. So for example, if I want to replace advanced and then another parameter, and this word is actually will replace the advanced word. So the next second parameter is another one. uh, let's, what should I write first? Programming. Let's, so if we run it, let's see what will happen. So you can see that it actually replaced the advanced programming with Python sentence, and advanced is the first word in that sentence. So it actually replaced the advanced with the first. So you can see here that it printed out first programming with Python. So similarly, this replace function is not just for the words. It can also replace the letters or characters inside our strings. So those are just basic ways that we can work with string inside of Python. And there are a lot of these functions that we can use with strings, and these are some of the most common which I just showed you right now. But if you just do a Google search, you can find all sort of Python functions that you can try out and use with the strings and see what they do. But you definitely want to get comfortable working with strings, mm, and Python obviously. So actually, when you type phrase, I would suggest you to go through all of these functions and see one by one, use these functions and see that what these functions are actually doing. That would be very helpful for you in your projects and obviously in your future also.